The Roman Republic, forged over centuries of conquest and political evolution, thus gasping its last breaths. Its foundations, already shaken by decades of civil war and the ambitions of powerful men, were about to crumble entirely. At the heart of this final, cataclysmic struggle were two titans forged in the shadow of Julius Caesar. One was Gaius Octavius, Caesar's grandnephew and posthumously adopted son, a young man of cunning intellect and icy resolve. Known to history as Octavian, he wielded his adoptive father's name as both a shield and a sword. His rival was Marcus Antonius, or Mark Antony, Caesar's most trusted general, a charismatic and battle-hardened veteran. Antony possessed a magnetism that could sway legions and a military reputation that was second to none. The Second Triumvirate, a pact that had once united these men with the lesser-known Lepidus to rule Rome, had dissolved into a bitter duopoly. Lepidus was sidelined, leaving the vast Roman world divided between Octavian in the west and Antony in the east. Antony had established his power base in Alexandria, the glittering capital of Ptolemaic Egypt. There, he had fallen under the spell of its formidable queen, Cleopatra Ctesiphon. She was not merely a seductress, but a shrewd political operator with immense wealth and a lineage stretching back to Alexander the Great's own general. Their political alliance was inseparable from their passionate and public love affair. This relationship became the central weapon in Octavian's propaganda war back in Rome. Octavian, a master of public perception, painted Antony as a man who had abandoned his Roman heritage. He was portrayed as an Eastern despot, bewitched by a foreign queen, and drunk on decadent luxury. The breaking point came when Octavian illegally seized Antony's will from the Temple of Vesta. He read its contents aloud to the horrified Senate and the Roman people. The will confirmed Roman territories would be given to his children with Cleopatra, and, most damningly, expressed his desire to be buried in Alexandria. This was a profound insult to the sacred soil of Rome. Public outrage, expertly stoked by Octavian, reached a fever pitch. The Senate was compelled to revoke Antony's powers and, cleverly, to declare war not on a fellow Roman, but on Queen Cleopatra. Thus, the final conflict was now inevitable. The world was not big enough for both men. Antony and Cleopatra began to gather their formidable forces. They assembled a massive fleet of some 500 warships, many of them enormous quinquiremes with bronze rams. Their army numbered around 75,000 infantry and a significant cavalry force. They made their base at Actium, on the southern side of the mouth of the Ambracian Gulf in western Greece. Octavian, meanwhile, was not idle, preparing his own response with meticulous care. His forces consisted of about 400 ships and an army of roughly 80,000 men. The true genius behind Octavian's military machine was his lifelong friend and admiral, Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa. Agrippa was a master of naval strategy, innovative and relentless. While Antony's ships were larger and more powerful, Octavian's were smaller, lighter, and far more maneuverable. These were the Liburnian galleys, designed for speed and agility rather than brute force. Agrippa's strategy was not to meet Antony head-on immediately, but to strangle his supply lines. He captured key coastal towns and islands, isolating the larger force at Actium. By the summer of 31 BCE, Antony and Cleopatra were effectively trapped. Disease, likely malaria, was rampant in their marshy encampment. Supplies dwindled, and desertions became a daily occurrence. Several of Antony's key Roman officers, dismayed by Cleopatra's influence, defected to Octavian's side. Antony's generals urged him to abandon the fleet and fight a decisive battle on land, where his legions were strongest. However, Cleopatra, whose royal treasury was on her ships, insisted on a naval breakout. Antony, either through love or political necessity, acquiesced to her plan. Decision was made. They would fight at sea. On the morning of September 2nd, 31 BCE, the sea was calm. Antony's fleet began to row out of the narrow strait of the Ambracian Gulf. They deployed in a crescent formation, a wall of floating fortresses. Octavian's fleet, commanded by Agrippa, waited for them in the open Ionian Sea. Agrippa refused to be drawn in close, keeping his distance and forcing Antony's heavier ships to move. For hours, the two fleets faced each other in a tense standoff. Finally, Antony's left flank was forced to extend and attack, initiating the battle. The clash was chaotic and brutal. Antony's large ships were difficult to damage with rams, but they were also slow and hard to maneuver. Agrippa's Liburnians swarmed around them like wolves harassing a bear. They avoided the rams, targeting the oars to immobilize the giants. Octavian's forces used catapults to launch projectiles and pots of burning pitch. They also employed the harpax, a grappling hook fired by a ballista, to winch themselves close for boarding. The battle raged for hours with no clear victor. Then, in the mid-afternoon, a sudden and inexplicable event occurred. A squadron of about 60 ships at the rear of Antony's line, Cleopatra's personal fleet, suddenly hoisted their sails. Catching a favorable wind, they broke through the fighting and fled south towards Egypt. Antony, seeing his lover's ships depart, made a fateful and disastrous decision. He abandoned his flagship, transferred to a smaller, faster vessel, and followed her. He left his entire fleet and his army to their fate. The sight of their commander deserting them shattered the morale of Antony's remaining forces. Confusion turned to panic, and resistance began to collapse. One by one, the proud ships of Antony's fleet were captured or surrendered. By nightfall, the sea was littered with the burning hulks of what was once a mighty armada. Victory for Octavian was total and overwhelming. A week later, Antony's land army, leaderless and without hope of escape, surrendered to Octavian without a fight. The Battle of Actium was over. Octavian, ever methodical, did not rush his final move. He spent the next year consolidating his power in Greece and Asia Minor. Meanwhile, Antony and Cleopatra had reached Alexandria. They were rulers without an army, leaders without a fleet. They spent their final months in a mixture of desperate revelry and grim preparation for the end. In August of 30 BCE, Octavian's legions arrived at the gates of Alexandria. What remained of Antony's forces deserted him or were swiftly defeated. Hearing a false report that Cleopatra had already killed herself, Antony fell into despair. He asked his servant to kill him, but the servant killed himself instead. Antony then stabbed himself in the stomach with his own sword. The wound was mortal, but his death was slow and agonizing. He was brought to the mausoleum where Cleopatra had barricaded herself. He was hoisted up by ropes and died in her arms. Cleopatra was captured by Octavian's men shortly after. Octavian intended to parade her through the streets of Rome in his triumph, the ultimate humiliation. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, would not suffer such a fate. She arranged to have a venomous snake, an asp, smuggled to her in a basket of figs. She died with regal dignity, robbing Octavian of his ultimate prize. With the deaths of Antony and Cleopatra, the final opposition to Octavian was eliminated. He annexed Egypt as his personal province, its immense wealth now his to command. The The civil wars that had plagued Rome for a century were finally over. Octavian returned to Rome in 29 BCE to celebrate an unprecedented triple triumph. He was the undisputed master of the Roman world. But he was too clever to declare himself a king or dictator. Instead, he carefully crafted a new political order, maintaining the illusion of the Republic. In 27 BCE, the Senate bestowed upon him the new title of Augustus, meaning the revered one. He became the princeps, or first citizen, the first among equals. This moment marked the end of the Roman Republic and the birth of the Roman Empire. The Battle of Actium was not just a naval victory. It was the foundational event of a new age. It replaced chaos with order, and republic with empire. The rise of Octavian to Augustus ushered in 2 centuries of relative peace and prosperity, known as the Pax Romana. The echoes of the wars at Actium would resonate through the rest of Western history. The world had been reforged in the waters off the coast of Greece. Antony's gamble for supreme power had failed spectacularly. Cleopatra's dream of a renewed Eastern Empire, ruled from Alexandria, died with her. Octavian's cold, calculated ambition had won the ultimate prize. The battle itself was a testament to Agrippa's superior naval tactics. The lighter, more numerous ships proved decisive against the larger, less agile ones. Firepots and grappling hooks were brutally effective weapons. Antony's decision to bring his war treasury with him on the ships proved a fatal weakness. It tied his strategy to the survival of Cleopatra's squadron. The flight of the queen was interpreted as either cowardice or a prearranged plan to escape. Whatever the reason, Antony's reaction was one of personal loyalty over military duty. This single act of desertion sealed the fate of his men. Octavian's victory was a masterpiece of propaganda as much as military skill. He had successfully framed a civil war as a foreign one. This allowed him to unite a war-weary Rome behind his cause. The spoils from Egypt funded a massive building program in Rome. He famously claimed he found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble. The Battle of Actium secured the borders of the empire for generations. It ended the Hellenistic age, which had begun with Alexander the Great. The center of power in the Mediterranean was now unequivocally Rome. The love story of Antony and Cleopatra became a legend, romanticized by poets and playwrights for millennia. But in its time, it was the catalyst for the end of a world. Octavian's long and stable reign would redefine Roman society. The memory of the Republic faded into a revered but distant past. The empire, born from the naval clash at Actium, would endure for nearly 500 years in the West. The final act of the Roman Republic played out on a bloody stage of wood and water. The ambitions of one man, Octavian, proved stronger than the traditions of 500 years. His victory was not just the end of his rivals, but the end of an era. The sea battle itself was a chaotic swirl of hundreds of ships. Soldiers fought desperately on decks slippery with blood and seawater. The sound of splintering wood and screaming men filled the air. Antony's command post on his flagship gave him a clear view of the unfolding disaster. The decision to flee would have been made in a moment of panic or cold calculation. For the common soldier, the departure of the command squadron was an unforgivable betrayal. Octavian's forces pressed their advantage with ruthless efficiency. The aftermath in Alexandria was a period of profound dread. Antony's suicide was the final, tragic act of a once great Roman general. Cleopatra's end was a carefully staged act of defiance against her conqueror. Octavian's return to Rome was the symbolic beginning of his absolute power. The transformation from Octavian to Augustus was a political masterstroke. The Battle of Actium thus stands as one of history's most decisive turning points.